You're watching the very first episode of Game Development, and today we'll be having a chat about finding an art style for your game. So let's get started. Hello everyone, this is Stephen Caruana and welcome to the very first episode of Game Development. Every week I get to pick the brains of some talented people from the game dev industry, and joining us this week is Tino from Sesabot Studio. Hi Tino.
Hello. Thanks for having me on the show, on the first one, I believe.
Yeah. Tino, why don't you start by telling us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, so my name is Tino van de Kraan. I am a game developer and co-founder of Sesabot Studio. I'm mostly involved with art direction on our current game, Fragments of Him. It's like an interactive narrative game. And I met Steven at Gamescom and he asked me to be on this first episode, so I'm honored. Thanks.
So tell us, how long have you been developing games?
How long have I been developing games? Well, actually, full-time now about 1.5 years, and before that I followed a 4-year course in the Netherlands at the NHTV, and the course was labeled Indie Game Development. So it was focused on making games by yourself and also supporting the business aspects of development.
I see, so it's around 5 and a few odd months that you've been doing this.
Yeah.
Throughout this period, did you find a process which you use to find the right art style for a game, the art style which fits that particular game, or do you have a fixed process? I mean, is it something different for every game?
Well, when you start off, you think you can pick a style and run with it and expect everything to go well. So at the start, what I can recommend people doing when searching for an art style is just make a whole lot of mistakes pretty fast. Don't really think about the consequences too much. It's when you're starting out, it's really important to learn things, and you learn things by doing things wrong. So try a lot of different things, see what works, remember those, and learn from the lessons when making mistakes. But nowadays, when I think of art styles, you have to keep a lot of things in mind, like who is the audience that might play this game? What are the what are the specialties of the people that you're working with in terms of art style? What kind of specialties can you lean on? And what inspires you as a team and also as a person for a particular art style? And what fits with the game? If you have a certain theme that you want to build a game around, you can use that to also use as inspiration for an art style.
So it's kind of you're advocating maybe trial and error, kind of prototyping even in the art aspect, not just as reflecting how you prototype in game mechanics. Just try stuff out and see how it works.
Yeah, definitely. If you have like a concept on the table of all right, this is going to be a game that takes place in a hospital, and for example you have 2 players and you have to solve puzzles. I don't know, just a silly concept. I mean, you start looking around for inspiration about hospitals, like are you going for old hospitals or new types of hospitals? What kind of themes do you see emerging, like in terms of shape and visual design that relates to hospitals or puzzles themselves? But you can also just draw inspiration from things that have nothing to do with the theme whatsoever. So you could maybe like construct a hospital with a particular shape, let's say a hexagon. So you have a hospital that's set in the future that is made completely out of hexagons. And you can perhaps like pick a very strange location, let's say the North Pole. So you have a futuristic hospital on the North Pole that's only formed out of hexagons in terms of the reoccurring theme and shape of the environment. So with those elements, with those constraints that you're giving yourself, you already have something that you can follow as a guideline.
And that brings up an interesting point. You're even touching upon the art style influencing game mechanics that way, because if you're going for a futuristic art style or a hexagonal kind of hospital, you might even be affecting the way the game is played. So how does that factor in? Do you tend to start with the art and see how that will lead into the gameplay, or is it kind of a feedback system where one influences the other equally and you build both together to reach a possible far-off goal?
Well, both definitely strengthen each other and emphasize each other. I mean, if you make a game for example, hardcore gamers, then you might want to reflect that in the environments that you give the player. So very hostile looking shapes, for example, pointy shapes, or red, dangerous looking colors. It sort of you need to find ways in which your art style can strengthen the game that you're making, strengthen the mechanics and the feel that you're trying to convey.
You even mentioned trying things out even out of left field, so something which say, let's try a hospital with hexagonal rooms. But how would you evaluate the result of that? So is it based on, say, all right, overall this feels good, or this doesn't feel right, or do you look for specific things a bit more structured, a bit more academically, so to say, maybe look for color or certain aspects? I don't know.
Well, that's difficult because you're sort of treading on subjective territory, you know. I mean, especially with art, it's beauty is in the eye of the beholder. There's no right or wrong in art. There's what looks pleasant, what doesn't look pleasant. So it's the same thing with prototyping game mechanics. You create some concepts and you present it to people and you ask about their opinions, and if they believe it fits with the concept that you're basing your work around.
So external feedback, basically, kind of, I don't know, you're using other people's opinion to weigh in on even your kind of initial attempts to find a style for a game.
Yeah. I mean, if you have, let's say, if you have a particular target audience in mind, then this becomes a lot easier than if you are just making art or creating an art style for practice or for yourself. Because if you're making it for yourself, you just ask yourself this question, like, do I think this looks appealing? Yes. All right, let's keep it. Do I think this looks appealing? No. All right, let's change it. Or what puts me off? But if you're making a commercial game or a game for a particular audience in mind, it doesn't even need to be commercial, then you can ask the people that you are making the game for, or the art style for, or the look and feel. You present them, images, mood boards, concepts, and you ask them, like, we are making this type of experience. This is the visual style we have in mind. What do you think? And based on that, you can steer into the right direction.
Now, as an artist, and especially in early versions of say, trying to find your direction for your game art, how comfortable are you involving people in that kind of thing?
Well, that is like opening up your chest and exposing your heart, right? I mean, you put your heart and soul into your work, and you are sort of you don't want to hear the negative things, but those are especially the things that help you get better. So also, if you get I mean, you don't have to see it as criticism that will completely change the things you've made. You can take on that criticism and see if you agree with it. I mean, you don't have to change your work because people sort of disagree with the choices that you've made. But you can take that feedback, and it's always a difficult topic because you are really careful with what you expose, and you're sort of you don't want to. It's difficult to describe, but you're definitely touching on a point that feedback from others is difficult to ask, because you always see things you want to change yourself before exposing it to others. But eventually you need to show it to the outside world and open up the ears and eyes and see what people say of it and think of it.
It has to happen at some point, basically, and might as well do it at
it has
an
to
early
happen at
stage.
some point. But yeah, you are right. Like, the earlier you show things, the the sooner you can get over that feedback lump or threshold. And I'm a victim of this as well. I mean, I want things to look pretty before actually releasing it, but there has to be a point where you're like, all right, now it's the time to show to the outside world. And there are going to be people that disagree with the things you've done, and there are people that are going to agree with the things you've done, and you as the person in charge have to decide who you listen to, and if the criticism is valid. Sometimes criticism is valid, that people can help you improve yourself.
And how do you improve yourself? How do you improve on something you've already done? Come up with new ideas, make it better, or just try something different?
Right. I would definitely say constrain yourself. Constrain yourself by creating assets or art for a game by following particular rules, by only using particular shapes or only using particular lighting, for example, or because an example that we use now for fragments of him, we have sort of said, all right, we're going to keep everything grayscaled, but we want to convey mood with coloring the lighting. So, you know, the skies will have different lights, the lights from outside, the lights from inside. We also use sort of what you call it, tone mapping and color grading to, you know, convey different moods. But all the environments will have a particular gray kind of look to it. And that is one way that we give this particular game a different style from what you've probably been used to seeing before. We constrained ourselves in going for this particular kind of look. I don't know if you've ever paid attention, for example, to Mass Effect. Mass Effect, throughout the entire trilogy, I believe it is, they try to incorporate an arc into everything. Like there's an arc in that ship they fly around, there's an arc in the logo, there are arcs in the armors that they use, there are arcs in the interior of the ship, there are arcs in the weapons that they use. It is everywhere, and I've recently read a micro blog about this. It was on Control 500, I believe, so CTRL 500. They have a whole bunch of like micro blogs, and you know, once they mention that, you're like, then you're right, like the arc is everywhere where you notice it. And even the art director there, he said he had to make a gunship for that for Mass Effect, and you know, he went into his default way of creating arts or content, and he made this very awesome looking gunship, but it didn't fit with the game because there wasn't any arc in it. It was like very hard shapes and surfaces in it. So to answer your question, how can you train yourself in this particular aspect, not on a technical level but more on a conceptual level, is constraints. Constrain yourself.
So basically what you're saying are kind of finding anchor points to say this is going to be a constant, and we'll keep going around that constant. And I think you do is kind of exploring that, maybe moving back a little, but always returning to that.
Yeah,
that
because you challenge yourself to find association with that anchor point that you might have otherwise not seen before. Because you would have, you know, moved that anchor point elsewhere because it was more convenient. And sometimes the less convenient thing to do will, you know, give you results that you don't see that often. So what you could also do is, like a game jam, in a very short, limited amount of time, you create a game, usually with a small group, and those games are usually revolving around a theme. So when you get that theme, and you combine that with games, you usually get results that you otherwise wouldn't have gotten before. And what you can do, if you are doing a game jam, you can also, like out of a library of inspirational pictures, you could just pick a random image and use that to base your art style around. So very recently I've been following a Twitter channel of, I think it's called Archselect, and I don't know where all the images come from, but they're so very inspirational. I mean, the Twitter channel itself doesn't say anything, it just posts pictures, and these pictures to me are like, wow, this looks interesting, and wow, that looks interesting. You can do so much with just that graphic. I can link it to you in chat, and maybe you can
sure.
put it in the description of the video. But yeah, these pictures have already inspired me to base like button styles or interface styles on them, or like in our game we have invisible walls, and I saw this graphic come by. I was like, oh, this could be really interesting to use that as a way to visualize these walls that players can't move through. So I am dropping it in your chat at the moment.
Yeah, got it.
So yeah, to me they're very inspirational. They show images that I would have never looked for. And yeah, hopefully the viewers, or the listeners rather, can also find some inspiration out of this.
So kind of expanding your repertoire of not knowledge, but kind of inspiration, basically things to pull from when you're working.
Yeah, you can see it as ammunition. Like for all right, we need to create something. I want to create something that is out of the ordinary. You browse through the images, like, all right, this looks really cool. I want to make something based on this. And I've done it in the past as well, because once every 2 months I organize this sort of independent games gathering, like a get-together of game developers. And I create like a banner art for this once in a while. And I use the same approach. I just browse. I've got this sort of graphic design book as well. I browse through the book and I'm like, all right, I really like this shape, or I really like this color combination. And then I try to create a banner based on what I see there. But I use my own take. You know, I get inspired by the work there, but I don't copy it.
Of course. Would you say that's a good suggestion for, say, a kind of aspiring artists out there trying to get a good start in this kind of thing, to start keeping maybe kind of their own graphics book by finding these images for inspiration, keeping a reference to them, or kind of something to look back at once in a while to get your memory, to jog your memory, or get your creative juices flowing, something like that. Is that a good thing, or would it maybe encourage staleness and rather keep it fresh by not keeping a reference somewhere?
Well, I think if you go look for references by yourself, you enter keywords and you find results. I think just getting confronted with images outside of the area that you would normally look for is I don't know. For me, it's very inspirational to confront myself with styles and graphics that I would normally not look for. And I know of other artists. I've seen these videos of artists when they work on compositions or graphic styles, and they talk through how they do it, and they keep like an image library of interesting images they see. And personally, in my free time, I also like to VJ, so video performance. And sometimes I see these videos come by and I'm like, oh, this is really awesome, and I save them. I keep them on archive because to me they're really inspirational. And when I get stuck on I have no clue what to make for this, I can browse through the archive there and use that as inspiration, just something to fall back on.
So Tino, what should we look out for from Sasabot Studio and yourself over the coming weeks? And where can we follow you?
Alright, yeah, like we talked before the intro, I'd really like to see you again at Gamescom. If we get to go there as well and see what you've been working on, and just continue the conversation there. I'm also open to conversations from others. So if you want to hit me up, you can look me up on Twitter. The tag is Tino VDK. So Tino and then my last name Van der Kraan VDK. Yeah, and in the meantime, I work on this interactive narrative game called Fragments of Him, so you can look that up, or look at the other games that we've made on Sesibot.com. And that's about it. Thanks.
Guys, make sure you follow him and keep an eye out for Fragments of Him.
Yeah, we're not ready to show that publicly yet, unfortunately. You got a sneak peek.
Yeah, I got a sneak peek.
Yeah.
Great, Tino, thank you so much for sharing your time with us today.
Thanks for having me.
Guys, please click on the subscribe button so that you don't miss future episodes of Game Development, and feel free to leave any questions or suggestions in the comment section below or on Twitter. And that brings us to the end of this week's episode, but I hope that you'll join me again next week for another Game Development chat. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all very soon.